Right now, a record 80 million people across the world have been forced to flee their homes, escaping war and persecution. Uprooted, the refugee in world history gives voice to the story of escape and deportation. Historian Andreas Kossert quotes letters, diaries, novels and poems, personal accounts from those who have lost everything, then and now. Armenians fleeing pogroms in Turkey, Germans expelled following the Second World War, the mass exodus from the civil war and genocide in Rwanda, refugees from Syria.
The
refugee lives in a constant state of ambivalence. On the one hand, it's circumstances that have forced them to leave their homeland, and historically we know that's usually for good. On the other, it's others who decide whether or not they are taken in and if they are welcome. Many never truly arrive in their new home, remaining strangers, full of longing for what they've lost. Andreas Kossert gives voice to this fate, because, he says, we are no different, and we could all become refugees at any time. Who am I? Where do I belong? And why do others see me only as a foreigner? Asal Dardan describes growing up as a child of Iranian exiles in Germany using autobiographical essays, exploring the themes of home, exile and identity. Dardan mixes her own personal experience with social analysis. Observations of a Barbarian is a reflection on what it means to grow up in another, foreign country. I really want to say that the foreigner, the stranger, doesn't always have to be seen as scary, a threat, just because they're different. Basically, I want to underline that otherness doesn't mean there can't be any we. In her book, Dardan combines memories of family rituals with reflections on Germany's notorious NSU murders, widely seen as a case study of structural racism in the country. She asks, what does Germany's Nazi past mean in terms of her own identity? Dardan says her otherness has only ever mattered in Germany. Her book, a call to confront the cracks in society and bridge the gap between us and them. A researcher's life. Ethnologist Heike Behrend's work has seen her travelling back and forth to Africa for over 5 decades. Now she's written her autobiography, detailing her extraordinary life. It was important to me not to focus on the heroism of a field worker, but to show the other side. With Incarnation of an Ape, Heike Behrend shows how misjudgments and chance can shape field research, and how she experienced that as a foreigner, she herself could also become an object of study. The whole point was to reverse the perspectives and show that those who I thought I was studying were actually studying me, showing how they saw me. As a monkey, for example, the way European colonial masters used to view Africans. Heike Behrend also describes one of ethnology's main dilemmas. Ethnologists once set out to differentiate between cultures, but have had to find out that a clear distinction between cultures is no longer possible in the same way. In a globalised world, people can no longer be divided into them and us. Was this ever possible? Instead of difference, Behrend describes a process of mutual mirroring. This an important contribution when confronting the other. When Daniel Leese first picked up these notebooks at a flea market in Beijing, he had no idea how explosive they'd turn out to be. The documents in question were around 300 grounds for judgment from China's Intermediate People's Court, where crimes against the Maoist Cultural Revolution, which counted over 100 million victims, were tried. This is testimony to the fact that even after Mao's death, it was the Communist Party itself which pushed ahead with the reprisals of the state's own crimes. In Mao's Long Shadow, Leese describes how the Chinese Communist Party managed to preserve its own power and social cohesion while still confronting the past. The party tried many different approaches to deal with these homemade injustices. First, by focusing on not solving political issues as such, but by complementing them with a kind of caring dictatorship. There was always another perspective that maybe after 20 years this history would have to be revisited, when strong emotions might have passed. Today, coming to terms with the past is no longer a topic. The party pushes national greatness and material prosperity as their main goals. Mao's long shadow shows us that behind this public image there is another China, a country with a complicated past. Are vaccinations dangerous? Is alcohol worse for you than cannabis? And do men and women really think differently? Topics that polarise. What's fact and what's just opinion? How can we debate constructively without attacking each other? In The Lowest Common Reality, mighty Nguyen-Kim argues for a more scientific spirit when it comes to social discourse. By scientific spirit, I mean scientific thinking, scientific methods, scientific learning by error, and the culture of scientific discussion. And I believe that if we could transfer scientific strengths to our social and political debates, then those debates could become enjoyable again, because we'd be struggling together for the best solutions. But even scientists don't always agree with each other. So what then? Mighty Nguyen-Kim uses a wide range of topics to show how science works, where methods differ and where there's consensus, and how we can use this knowledge to argue, not less, but better. Democracy is in crisis. Populists are changing the world. The corona pandemic has exacerbated many existing problems. And what about civil liberties? Is democracy in serious danger? In his book Degrees of Freedom, constitutional law expert Christoph Möllers looks at how we can counter the threat of erosion and what constitutes liberalism today. When we say we are in a liberal order and that it's being threatened by authoritarian forces, then we need to also think about what it is we are actually defending. There's not much literature that explicitly explains what this fight is being waged for. In 349 short chapters, Möllers explores property and the common good, Europe as a community of rights, the climate crisis. He describes his book as a political travel guide, which can be started or picked up at any point. One thought connects all his observations. For Möllers, in a democracy, both individual and collective freedom belong together. Individuality is a community product, and understanding this is, I think, not entirely unimportant for keeping a democracy healthy. The world into which Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel was born in 1770 was a world of huge upheaval. It was the time of the American War of Independence and the French Revolution. The Montgolfier brothers invented the hot air balloon. James Cook sailed to the end of the earth. And it was the time of great German philosophers, most notably Hegel. This period of time is known as the Schwellenzeit, the threshold period. That is a time when it wasn't clear what would become of the old aristocratic society. In short, Hegel's world was a world of scientific innovations, of voyages of discovery, of the educational institution, of the founding of the gymnasium, the grammar schools. So when all the achievements we have today actually either came into being or were at least conceived. Hegel's world has two main elements: a time of upheaval and German idealism, including thinking. Hegel questioned everything, even thought itself. Jürgen Kaube says today Hegel's work is more important than ever, a necessary antidote to all those who are satisfied with simple truths. What makes great literature? Who is a gifted stylist? And who breaks all the rules and is celebrated for doing just that? The Snake in Wolf's Clothing, The Secret of Great Literature, tries to answer these questions. After burying himself in his library for 2 years, Maar found actually the secret can't be revealed. But good style, you notice quickly. I think once you've read the 600 pages of my book, you'll have a couple of ideas about what works and what you might try and what you might leave as is. When it comes to the many authors covered, I think it's made pretty clear what their respective secret or their respective fingerprint might be. For Michael Maar, the great literary stylists are Thomas Mann, Franz Kafka and Heimito von Dodero. Among the emerging literary greats, there are some women in the mix, Herta Müller and, surprisingly, actress Hildegard Knef. His selection is not a literary canon, but a tour of his own library. Maar writes with great passion and even takes some delight when knocking a literary great or two off their pedestals.